For 30 years, I gave everybody else their opinion, their thoughts, their voice, like they lived in my head. No, man, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, that's the other thing. I don't want people, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're okay. You're human. Like, that's part of the human experience is to feel highs, lows, to be different. And embrace that. Like, just be, like, just be you.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to What You Don't Hear. Toss in those headphones, pull up a seat. It's time to get to know somebody a whole lot better. This is a life podcast. It's an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest journey, finding out what makes them who they are, talking about all the ups, all the downs, all those thoughts and feelings in between, as we dig into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't get to hear. I'm your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a creative of many kinds, a maker of many things, sometimes maybe too many things. But hey, here is a reminder up front to make sure that you're subscribed to this show on whatever platform that you're checking this out on right here, right now. Whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, find that like or follow button and hit it for me if you would be so kind. And if you really like the show, and you want to make sure you don't miss any of it, you can follow us around social at WYDH Pod. And listen, I get it. You hear these things all the time from every creator, every single day, everywhere, on all the platforms. But we got to ask these things because it truly does help more than you may think. The support goes a really long way in helping me continue to make all of these creative endeavors happen. And speaking of support, I'm lucky enough to have some partners and supporters of this show in the form of sponsorships. So I've got a few of those to tell you about right now, and then we'll get into this week's conversation. So first up, this episode is sponsored by Promo West Productions. So if you live in or around the Columbus, Ohio area, and you're interested in catching a live show, going and getting that live music experience, well, then you may want to check out one of these upcoming concerts that are coming your way via Promo West. They've got ZZ Top coming to Kemba Live on August 27th. Then Newfound Glory is also at Kemba Live on August 28th. Then Flatland Calvary is at Kemba Live on Friday, September 6th. And then Cupcake comes to Newport Music Hall on September 12th. So if you want to grab tickets to any of those shows, you can. All you got to do is jump to AXS.com, or as always, for more information on these or any other upcoming concerts, if you want to know who's coming to town and when, you can find all the info you need at promowestlive.com or follow them online at promowestlive. All right, if you or someone you know is looking for a place to live, well, you may want to listen to this next part because this episode is sponsored by River and Rich. Located in the Franklinton Arts District of Columbus, River and Rich is that set of colorful buildings right there on Rich Street, and they want you to know that Franklinton is a real cool place to live. Now, River and Rich brings together quality apartments, desirable amenities, and a vibrant artistic community. They offer 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and townhouse-style apartments, all with open floor plans, oversized windows, and modern finishes. The amenities include a huge 24/7 gym, a heated pool, a fully stocked coffee bar, a secure package delivery room, pretty much everything you'd be looking for in a place to live. And it doesn't just stop at the building, because River and Rich embraces and connects with the art-filled Franklinton community around them, with local art and murals featured all throughout the building and the community itself. River and Rich is both a place to go home to and is also becoming a living piece of art in its own. So if that sort of environment sounds like one that you want to live in, well, you can. So go check it out. They offer both guided and self-guided tours, so you can go check out an apartment anytime. Visit their website at riverandrichcolumbus.com for more information. Also, check this out. Because you listen to this podcast, I might be able to help you get a freaking apartment, you guys, because for right now, new applicants can receive up to half off their security deposit if you use the code WYDHPOD when applying. So again, for more information, please contact River and Rich. Certain restrictions might apply. Hop over to riverandrichcolumbus.com to get things going and go join the colorful life over at River and Rich. Okay, so this week I have a very cool and I don't know, I guess I would say like a slightly different feeling episode and conversation as I share a conversation with my guest, Nic Bronkall, who is, well, as you hear us talk about here, is a few different things. He's a physical therapist, he's a breathwork specialist, a strength and conditioning coach, all those things mixed into what I've gotten to know as just a very, very cool and down-to-earth dude with a really solid outlook on rehabbing the body and mind, as I've gotten to know him better in the last handful of months, and obviously really well here in this conversation. We both go to and work at our gym, CrossFit Gehenna, and after having so many fun, just life talks within about 10-minute increments here and there in passing all the time, I pieced enough cool things together to know that I just wanted to sit down for one full deep dive into kind of how and why he thinks the way that he does and how he's gotten involved in all the things that he does. I've never met someone who focuses on rehabbing the body via doing it kind of from the inside out. It's not just working on a muscle or not just working on an injury or something like that. He focuses on literally like how your breathing affects your blood flow and how that affects your nervous system and how that affects like how your body literally just works in general. A crazy example is the first time that I ever worked with Nic to work on a slight injury that I had at the gym. Literally, we took before and after photos after a session with him, which was all just breath work. And in the before photo, I'm kind of like tensed up, I'm hunched over. I didn't know I stood like that. And then after, 15 to 20 minutes, if that, of focused breath work, my posture, my body, everything, the way I held everything looked totally different. So immediately I was hooked, and it's just so wild, all that he does. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that, of how all that came to be, and just how he got involved in that, and really a lot of those details behind it. So as we dig into his story of how being diagnosed with ADHD as a kid actually kind of hurt him a bit and gave him the feeling that there was something wrong with him, even though he didn't feel that way, right? And how that kind of stuck with him through life, and that led directly into a ton of his work and his outlook that he shares here. And how he helps people learn their bodies and learn how to navigate these quote-unquote issues, and learning that sometimes there's not necessarily something wrong with us. It's just our body acting maybe the way that it should, and we just need to react accordingly to kind of get that under control. Obviously, he's going to explain it 100 times better than I can here. But that's what a lot of his work is about, is just helping people learn their bodies and why they act out or react in certain ways, whether to physical injury or emotional response like anxiety and stuff like that. He has a lot of cool thoughts on all of it, and just things on like how to manage stress and what parenthood has taught him, how our body responding to injury really means that it's doing its job right, technically. And a lot of how, even if it feels like we're broken, physically or internally, emotionally, we're just not, and we can take control of that, and there are things that we can do to get that under control. I know I'm kind of being vague with these very general points here, but it's just kind of almost hard to describe Nic's point of view on all of this stuff, because it's I don't know, it's just cool. That's all I can say. It's just cool. I can't really do it justice here and explain it the way that he does. So, of course, the point of this podcast is to hear him explain all of that. So let's just get to that part, shall we? So you're about to get to know a little bit more about your body, your mind, your breath, and along with all that, getting to know the story of Nic Bronkall a whole lot better right here, right now. It's episode 119 of What You Don't Hear. And that was my thing, is like when I can sit and almost in passing have random, because I feel like you and I have like these 5-minute conversations all the time, passing by at the gym, and I'm like, okay, man, yeah, we're building a solid friendship within 5-minute increments, every couple times a week. So yeah, I'm stoked to actually like take a deep dive, and I've gotten pieces and parts of your story, and obviously like I know what you do, which we'll dive into for the show here, but like I'm excited to actually just kind of have an uninterrupted, longer than a 5-minute conversation. Yeah. Hey, unless you got to go, we can make this a 5-minute podcast.
We could.
But for right now, let's dig into everything, because again, there's so much that I know, so much that I feel like I don't know, and just stuff that I want to know more about. So this is something that you and I have talked about, where you've said you don't really know how to like explicitly explain what you do, because you're still kind of like uncovering it, and it's changing.
I think I got it. I do think I have it.
So how would you now lay that out?
So Columbus Breath and Exposure is a physiology-based performance company that focuses on nervous system health for healing and performance. And we do that through breath, massage, movement, and strength and conditioning. Okay,
man, you do have that down now. You got that spot on.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at with it.
So I want to dig into all of that, and there's like a million different things that we can uncover, and we could potentially be here for 4 hours, which we're going to try not to do.
Sure. My wife would appreciate it.
Yes. I just want to dig into like, where does any of this begin for you? And I know that's going to splinter off into a dozen different layers, but like now, okay, like you do, massage therapy, you do the breath work, you do the exposure therapy, like all these different things. Where, like, take me back, whether it's the beginning, whether it's a couple years ago, like how does any of that even start? Like, where's the interest in that even begin?
I would say it probably stems from being diagnosed with ADHD when I was 7. You're told, it's a hard thing for like a 7-year-old to hear, like you have a disorder, right? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And to be like, your brain works differently. You have a chemical imbalance, like something's not right. Instead of me thinking, I think everything's fine, people just weren't listening to what I was saying. And we can talk about ADHD. I have some opinions on that, but it was a neurodevelopmental disorder. So something's wrong with the brain and how it's developing. And then just over having to deal with that I didn't do well in school. I couldn't sit still. Like, there's something wrong with him. And honestly, it was my first babysitter that said something to my mom, was like, hey, I think he has this. And that kind of planted a seed. And then I go to daycare and then school, and I can't sit still. He's not listening. He's all over the place. We don't know what to do. Like, you have to get him on medications, right?
Yeah.
That was my experience growing up. But when I was about 10 or 11, my dad bought me a weight set. Hyperactive, we got to get him in activity. Like, he got me involved in sports. And that was kind of like where my love for the weight room really started. So I've probably been in a weight room for 30 years because of my dad.
Okay.
And more than once, it's like saved my life. The weights have always kind of been there. I played 4 sports through high school. College, didn't play any sports, did the whole band thing for a couple years. And then I was like, okay, got to get my life together. Got to get a real job. Right. So I was like, I'm going to become like a strength coach. But at the same time, like, my mind was still a mess. So like everything that people had told me when I was growing up, their voices replaced my voice. Nobody was listening to me. I was a little kid, like, and like my wife's sister's like, she works with kids with ADHD, and she's like, what are some of the things I just listen to them. They're not lying to you. Like, and that was growing up, nobody listened to me. So it was just easier to be quiet. But when I got older, I was physically fit, always took care of myself. It was still like my mind was a mess, like the anxiety, the depression, like the way I talked to myself was just like, I would go back to old journal entries. It's like, why are you writing this? Like, this is so mean. Like, it was almost like it wasn't me though. It was like this weird, just like abusive father. Not that my dad was abusive, but just like the way I talked and treated myself. It was just like this abusive parent to myself. And then I was living in Cleveland with my now wife. I didn't want to be here anymore. I just couldn't take it anymore. And like, I remember like, it was like, all right, I just can't do this. But then something in the back of my head was like, hey, like, there's people you haven't met yet that need you. So if you're not going to do this for yourself, like, kind of like, get your shit together, because people need you. So if you're not going to do it for you, do it for them. And that kind of like, I would say, saved my life. And then I started learning about the brain. What is a neurodevelopmental disorder? People are telling me my whole life, you have to learn to control yourself, control your emotions, control your actions, but no one ever like actually taught you how to do that. They just just do as I say. And it's like,
Yeah.
you're the one thing was like, you have too many emotions, or like you heighten emotion or sensitivity, like you're too sensitive, which I'm learning is like, that's a good thing. I'm more in tune, especially with my clients. And that kind of sent me down the nervous system and then into breath work, and then starting to learn that I have control. I don't have ADHD. I just have a brain that works differently, and knowing how my brain works and how I can work with it gave me more control. So that was kind of like everything that I do with my clients are the things that I did to be like, to take control of my life. So I had already been like a strength and conditioning coach for, I don't know, 8 years at the time before I got my massage license. And so I just keep adding tools to help people, because the more I learn is like, people yes, the fitness part's important, but there's like the lifestyle component and integration that kind of they need help with. So, still figuring out what I do, but we're getting there, right? Like, but it's just been a mashup of everything I've learned on how to take care of myself, and I'm just sharing it with other people.
Yeah.
That there's a different way. I don't want to say it's better. I don't always like to say it's better. I'm learning that through parenting. You find the way that's best for you. Mm-hmm. But this way has helped me with a lot of mental health. I don't want to say issues, because it's like, there weren't issues. It's just mental health. Like when I have an injury, I go to physical therapy, right? Like we rehab it, we give it the body's thing. So the brain needs the same thing. Nervous system needs the same thing. And no one's talking about nervous system health. At least I don't think they are in the way that it should be.
Mm-hmm. And all of those things are, again, there's so many things we can branch into, but it's all of that has made, like I mentioned, all of our little like 5 to 10 minute side conversations, right? So interesting, because, even when I initially really came to you with like a subtle like nagging kind of injury or whatever, at the gym, even the way that you spoke about that issue or dissecting that issue, or it wasn't just a quick diagnosis of like, oh yeah, you're hurt, let's just go massage it and move it around a little bit and whatever. It was truly like even fascinating the way, and again, you just explained so much of it. Like, I think it's fascinating the way that you have learned to look at so many of these different things and not just sit and say, oh, it's this, that's just how it is, do this quick fix and blah, blah, blah. And not that, I'm not saying other people always look for the quick fix, although, society does in general. But like somebody else in your position, I'm not going to say looks for the quick fix all the time. But I feel like your kind of even demeanor that you approach all that stuff is just so interesting to me. And those are a lot of the things that it's like, again, I know you just laid it all out and there's so many different directions we can take this, but that's a lot of the stuff that I want to dig into, is how you even develop these outlooks on these things and develop that care and that concern, develop the ability to look at a problem and be able to look layers beneath the problem, both figuratively and literally in some cases, because you're working with people's bodies. But, even when I came to you and I was like, hey, my shoulders really bother me, I think it's like a nerve thing or whatever. And you're like, all right, cool, we'll feel it around, but I'm not just going to tell you to do a handful of different stretches. We're going to work on how you're breathing. And then you showed me, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know I breathed like that. And I didn't know that my posture would change when I started breathing like this. So these little, these different techniques and things to focus on. It's just this entire like fascinating world that I don't think a lot of people know about, think about. Again, it's usually just like, hey, massage out a sore muscle and there you go. And you're sitting, and it's so interesting to hear you dissect something of like, well, we gotta, let's really dig into why the muscle is being sore and why it's tensing up and why. And I'm just like, in general, praising you in the sense of, it's just cool to see how you look at a lot of this stuff. And I'm very curious to dig deeper into how this kind of spawns from like the ADHD and all that sort of stuff as a kid. And again, I know you just laid out the whole story, but I want to take us back into that timeline a little bit. Like, what was growing up like? Like, who were you as a kid? What were you into? How were and once you get that diagnosis, even like, as a kid who doesn't totally understand that, doesn't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like as a kid, we don't know when we
can kind of almost be hurt by something like that, you know, of like, oh man, that feels weird. Like, is that how it felt for you as a kid? Were you aware enough to be like, wait, this is, now I'm having to do all these things or take these medications or not play? Like, I guess, how did that diagnosis feel as a kid, and what was growing up like in that sense?
I mean, the diagnosis felt like a prison sentence. I was treated differently. Like, we had to go to all these talk therapists, and like in the schools, they have like the little small room for the kids who don't do well in class, and like I had to go to that and like go to tutoring, and it's like, it's not that I didn't do good in school. Like, I did well in school. It's like I didn't care. And so many people have told me my oldest son reminds them of me in the way he behaves in a minute. But in my head, I'm like, I know where that ended up. It ended up with like this diagnosis. Like, I was led to believe that there's something wrong with me. And I look at him as like, well, he's just a kid with a lot of energy, so I need to provide him with an environment that allows him to express himself in a physical manner. And like, that's another thing we can go down is like, we are designed to move and move a lot. That's actually how our brain grows. That's how we learn, is through movement. So now you have kids sitting for 7 to 8 hours, and then you're drugging them, and then they want to move, and we're like, what's wrong with the kids? It's like, can we please take a step back and like, there's nothing wrong with the kids. It's what's wrong with the adults. And why are we choosing to say, like, why is the first thing, what's wrong with the kid, instead of like, hey, why might the kid be responding that way? It's the same thing with an injury. What would potentially cause this? Why is their nervous system deciding to react this way? Right? And those are the questions I'm just innately curious, and I one of my favorite sayings is from a band called Straight from the Path, is like, thinking like everyone else isn't really thinking. And I really like that because I just always questioned everything. I never did what I was told to do. But sports saved my life. That's what kept me in school. If I didn't have sports, I don't think I would have graduated high school. So like, I went to school to essentially play sports. Didn't Cardell Jones say? He's like, I don't play school, I play sports. Like, that was essentially it. I did 3-4 sports. I was always busy, always active, and that gave me where my outlet was, and then had to do well in school to stay on the team. So the initial, like through middle school, it was like a sentence, but it's like I got like that prison sentence. But when I got into high school and started getting more into friend groups and having like music as an outlet, sports as an outlet, like school was like, all right, it's just something I got to get done. Yeah. And it was after that, but I didn't realize the residual effects that stuff would have into my late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. So you weren't acknowledging it, you know, once you get to high school and you're like, wait a second, now that I have these outlets, oh, this is what I needed. Like, it was just kind of more of a natural path of, cool, I'm in high school now, I've got these other things to do, I'm less concerned about, like, and were you like medicated that entire time? Were you on like ADHD meds and all that stuff? I had this
conversation with my mom, wondering if you would ask these questions, because I didn't know like the whole timeline.
Yeah.
I was on Ritalin, she said, till about 6th or 7th grade, when like football sports really got into.
Okay.
But I hated being on the medications. It changed who I was. It changed how I felt. And like, I knew like it didn't feel right. Like this, it took away like whatever little part there was of me for me to shine or like be myself. And like my parents, you know, it was a different time then also, right? You went to the doctor said, this is what's wrong. You're like, okay. Like, they didn't have the amount of resources that we do. They may have, but the work that we would require to dig through those resources was to go to the library, I don't know, and like dig through research papers. Like,
yeah.
So, you know, but my parents did listen to the best they could. Like, hey, the medicine did, okay, we'll take them off. You know, my dad bought me the weight set. Cool. Like, hey, sports, like, we're going to give them outlets for this. And, you know, but still never learned the skills of like understanding what's truly going on in my head, not what's wrong with it, but like what's actually going on at like a physiological level that, you know, that I think that's one thing I do with people is like teaching them how their body actually works, so like they can work better with it. Right? Like, and when you understand how these things work with simple tools, then you're in a better position to take care of it. So yeah, that's a long-winded response to
that's perfect.
Yeah, and that was, was always just the innate curiosity of like, first it was like physical performance, getting better for sports, looking good, right? And then, treat the whole body. I understand how performance works, but how does like the rest of the body kind of work? And I felt like that was kind of what was missing in physical therapy and chiropractic work. Like, had a lot of powerlifting injuries, and I wasn't getting what I felt were the right answers. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, things just didn't make sense to me. And that's kind of pushed me towards going massage therapy, like pain injury route. But I'm like, and then I just keep ebbing and flowing with the things that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and even starting this conversation by being like, hey man, have you figured out how to describe yourself yet, right? It's like anybody could ask me that same question, and I can give the label of like creative director. But to your point of, well, I acquire these skills, and then I learn some new problems that need solved, so I acquire these skills. And then I learn some new evolutions that I need to take, so then I acquire these skills. I feel like I've done a very similar path when it comes to, all the work that I do, where I have constantly evolved and changed. And I don't think that that's wrong to do. And like, not that I'm looking for you to be like, no, actually, I feel like, yes, you fully agree with that. But like, I say that to emphasize that idea of like, I feel like a lot of times people do get stuck in that, like, once I get good enough at this thing, that's sort of just what I do now. And we're not really searching for the further answers, the next evolution, the next step. And there's been a lot of times where I've battled with that, where in my world, I'm like, why can't I just stop where I'm at? Like, why can't I just kind of get the satisfaction of, well, I do enough of this, that's okay. Because as soon as I learn something new, or as soon as I find out there's something new to learn, or a new way to tell a story, or a new way to connect with somebody, I just have the inability to just say, I can't say no to pursuing that. And I feel like you're similar with a lot of the things that you do, just like you just said, of like, okay, we do some chiropractic work, we do just the powerlifting things, we do just this, and it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with acquiring all of these new skills to then be able to connect with and effectively help people in all of these different ways. Now, another way that I want to point that I want to emphasize that I feel like you and I are similar that I'm learning is the schooling part of things. Because I feel like I was incredibly similar in school, where I remember like they had this talented and gifted program at my school. And I think what that meant was the kids who were like just really smart and got a bunch of A's. And I distinctly remember this one time where like I tested for that group because they were like, you should be in the group, and blah, blah, blah. And like it's cloudy of like, I feel like I was gonna get in, but then didn't, and something happened, whatever. And that kind of always stuck with me of like, what does that really mean? Like, what does that label really mean? This was like 5th grade, right? And I feel like I identified a lot of those things that you talked about earlier, where it's not that I wasn't straight up a good student or couldn't learn or anything like that. I could identify like very early on, like I was aware, and this doesn't mean that I was smarter than anybody or anything, but I was aware that I was like, I don't like whatever this is that we're doing. Yeah. Right? It's not that I can't learn, but I can also see that it's just about, can I retain this information until the test at the end of the week, and then can I pass that test, and then they think I did a good job, and then we just do it again. Like, I distinctly remember, like...
It's silly. Is it so...
Right, yeah, right. Like, I remember there was this whole thing in high school, once I really realized, like, that's where someone could look at, me growing up and be like, you were a bad student in high school. Now, I didn't get in trouble. I didn't, break rules and all this sort of stuff, but I didn't have the best grades. But it wasn't because I was getting dumber. But it was more so because I was like, the more I grow up, the more I realize I'm so uninterested about any of these things. Yeah. We're learning the same 4 years of history every year. I'm learning the same scientific definitions of things every single year. And it really set in for me. Like, I remember in our social studies class, our teacher would give us like 5 to 10 minutes before a weekly test to study the study guide. And I was like, this is just about remembering. That's all I got to do. I don't have to retain any of this information.
It's not learning.
Whatsoever. I don't have to learn anything. As long as I can remember it, get it right enough on the test, I'm good. And so even hearing you explain kind of how you were in school, like, I was very, very similar in that sense, where maybe it wasn't as far as like, the ADHD, diagnosis or anything like that, but there was this like lack of paying attention. And I remember there was a meeting with my parents and the whoever, was in power at, the school or whatever, where they were like, should we hold him back a grade because he's not applying himself? Or actually, we're kind of thinking of bumping him a grade ahead because we can tell that this isn't challenging enough for him. And it was just like this mess of confusion that they were just like, why can't he focus the right way in school?
Yeah.
And it ultimately was everything that you were saying of like, what, for how I was, I just didn't care. Like, and again, not in the way where I'm like spray painting the hallways and, being that kid or whatever, but more so I was just like, I just don't see how this matters. And I think in a way, like, yes, the growth and evolving and gaining all these new skills that I mentioned earlier, as an adult, I do think is an incredibly valuable thing. But like I said, there's times that I wish I could just stop, and I can see like a mirror of how I view the adult world and how I view school as very, very similar. Where like I look at a lot of the ways that business works or the world works in general, and what you have to do to get money and how you got to play the game and all this sort of stuff. And I'm so stubbornly in my own ways where I'm like, I don't want to do it that way.
Yeah, 100. That's everything. I don't know, just being a parent too, and like seeing kids and like, is this really right? They're only kids. You're only a kid for so long. You're an adult longer than anything. Right, childhood is this like precious thing. Why would I want to waste it where they're going to school for 8 hours, learning stuff that they don't enjoy? They can't sit still, like putting them in positions to make them question if they're smart or if they fit in or if they belong, when it's like they just need to be kids. Now, every kid's different, right? Like I have 2 boys and they may want 2 different things, and you build the environment that's conducive for the kids. So like my oldest, he might not go to public school because that might not be the best fit for him. The youngest, he might do well with and loves learning. Like I love learning. I loved college because I essentially got to choose the classes.
Yeah,
I chose my degree. I've chosen everything after high school that I've chosen to learn. Like that's, yeah, I love what I just signed up for another class, like another 12-week class, like deeper diving, like this breath and nerve, like just fully, because you can never know too much. Right? Like there's just, I don't know, you become stagnant. Like people graduate college and they go get their job and then they don't do anything for 20 years. Like it's stagnant. Like I gotta go. Like I got, my original undergrad was pre-med. I just couldn't picture myself doing that for the rest of my life, so I got out. Right? I got was a strength coach for 6-7 years. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. Like I gotta get out. Got to evolve. We got to keep evolving. Okay, got massaged. Got to keep evolving. And it just keeps evolving because I want to live kind of life on my terms, and I want to do what I want, getting paid. Like people are like, you're lucky. It's a privilege. Yeah, it is. But I chose this, and I knew this from a young age. I'm essentially unemployable.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, in the sense of working a 40-hour-a-week job, I'm just can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't.
Exact same.
Yeah. And just listening you talk about school again, it's like, dude, that's just so brutal.
Right.
Like for kids, like it's so, like I remember it's like that sucks.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what like a lot of adults' jobs are too. Except now it's the rest of they just went from the same.
Yes. And I mean, you're saying even the unemployable thing. It's like I feel the exact same way. It's not that I couldn't do well on a team. It's not that I can't follow rules. It's not that I can't do the task at hand. It is my stubbornness of I just genuinely don't want to, not out of laziness, but out of I know there's something else I could be doing that is productive to the world or the people around me or to myself ultimately. And, again, like a lot of career paths are hard for a lot of people. I can say from my experience of things, like, choosing the arts and entertainment world as a career path, maybe big mistake. I could sit and be like, hey, it sucks a lot sometimes, right? But I also know how much I like connecting with people, how much I like storytelling, how much I like, we were joking before we rolled of me being like, man, I've got like 97 podcasts and I'm going to make 97 more. It's not for, again, like we were joking about at the beginning of this, to hear myself talk, to share my opinions, to look cool on the internet or anything like that. It's because I can identify all of the different ways that I love storytelling, creating, making art, and connecting with other people. And I have this like undeniable nature almost where I'm like, I crave that connection. I crave that creation. And so for me, it's like I've thought about in a lot of different life pivots, one in which I'm in right now, where I'm like, God, like I wish I could go be employable. I wish I could get a rather normal job, have the cushion, and have, that safety net there or whatever, even though we've actually all learned that safety net doesn't exist with normal jobs. But that somewhat of that foundation there, and then just focus on all this stuff on the side to kind of just preserve energy and all this sort of stuff. But again, I think about that and I'm like, I run it through my head and I'm like, all right, what jobs wouldn't destroy my soul? And then I start to think about the ones that maybe could be okay. And then I instantly am like, no, that would destroy my soul. Right? Because it's like, for better or for worse, and I feel like you're similar, even from just a little bit of your story you've shared so far, is that like, I have to operate out of a place that brings me fulfillment, that brings me growth, that actually brings me some sort of happiness, even if it's very difficult and it isn't always happy. Not everything is always bad or always good. But like, I feel like I have to operate out of that place of clarity, of this has to connect to me in some way, or I literally don't know how to do it. So back to the school thing, I'm like, once I started to learn and identify, just like you're saying, of, man, why does it matter if I pass this test or not? Like, I don't want to be a failing student, but like, even the whole like permanent record thing that was around for a while, and you find out that's not even a real thing, and it's like, and it's the same thing effectively of like, yeah, don't be a shitty person, don't be an awful employee at your job or, whatever, like give your best foot forward and do what you got to do. But also ultimately, like if you get, let go from that job, there's another place you can probably go. Mm-hmm. And there's also something in you that you can ultimately uncover. And I do want to dive back into your story because speaking of like uncovering things, I am curious to know during, all these like phases of like we're beginning to grow up, getting into high school, we've grown up with this kind of battle of like, what is ADHD and who am I and all this sort of stuff. You discover music and you discover the weights. I want to talk about that timeline a little bit, or that moment in time of what did like how do you even get introduced into music, and how are you balancing that with like, cool, I'm a weightlifter over here and I'm also doing music, and more so, did either of those things ever turn into, oh, this is like my thing, not just a hobby, but like I want to do these things like for life?
Music, that's like, I don't want to say like regret, but like not pursuing music harder.
Okay.
That's always been like, man, like, just about so music, I have just a unhealthy obsession with music. My dad was, all we did was listen to music, mainly just classic rock. So Zeppelin, Allman Brothers, Rolling Stones, all that 60s, 70s music. Like my dad would just play that constantly. And then in eighth grade, we went and saw Metallica with like Kid Rock and Seven Dust. It was like January 1st, 2000, like the Y2K show in Cleveland. And seeing Metallica for the first time, I was like, I need a guitar. So Dad took me to Sam Ash like the next day and bought me a guitar. And then I had a music instructor, and he introduced me to blues. And he's like, you need to learn. That's where he started teaching me. It wasn't music theory. It wasn't like reading music. It was like, hey, we're gonna listen to blues music. We're gonna put these albums on. And we're gonna play, and you're gonna learn how to play this. And that's just kind of been my outlet, is music, playing music. It's really hard with 2 kids right now to make that a priority. But my kids are getting. My oldest is like getting into making noise, so he'll go in, turn on the guitar, and like hit it with the drumsticks, and it's fine. It's just a guitar. My dad played piano. My brother plays piano, drums, whatever. My brother, I think is a musical genius. I just wish he would tap into it a little bit more. He just likes playing music, right? I just think if he got with the right people, he could do some pretty cool things.
Yeah.
But yeah, music. Weightlifting was for sports. That's,
Okay.
you know, I played football, I did wrestling, and then lacrosse. So like, you know, I didn't have an off season. So like kids today, they play one sport and that's it. They play club sport, then they go to school, volleyball or baseball. That's it. I played 3 sports, and then in the summer we would train for football. So that, you know, there were sports and then there was music and hanging out with your buddies. But I was into hardcore music in high school, but the hardcore kids weren't like the good kids, right? They're kids smoking cigarettes and drinking and like smoking weed, right? Like, don't hang out with those kids. But those are who I hung out with after high school, and I was like, man, this was
This is what I've been missing out on.
we started a band, and that's a fun story too. How I joined the band was I just went to the house party after their show and just picked up the bass. Never played bass before. I just started laying down blues lines, and they're like, hey, you want to be in a band? I was like, yeah.
That's every bass player entering a band. That was me when I got into bands in high school. Was my cousin was the drummer. They needed a bassist, and they were like, Ross, you've looked at a guitar before, right? I'm like, I've seen one, and they were like, you're playing bass for this band now.
Yeah.
So that was exactly the same thing.
Even though guitar was like my main instrument, but I still have like a deep, like there's playing on stage and watching people move to your music, especially in like the hardcore metal scene, to like a full crowd. There's like, you know, like a breakdown, and it just hits, and there's just something that's you created that, and you caused this reaction. Like there's no other feeling like that. I still, you know, once the kids get older, can hopefully have like an old man band we play maybe on the weekends or something.
Incredible.
But yeah, music and sports like saved my life. Lifting, I mean, those two things have always been there for me. They've always, I would say, keep me honest. Right in the weight room, 135 pounds is 135 pounds. Doesn't matter the type of day you're having. You know, it always kept me honest. It's never right. Obviously, they're not real objects, right? But you know, they've always been there for me when I needed them. Especially growing up, I didn't feel like I had that. The people, I've had a hard time fitting in growing up. Like, even though I played so many sports, I never felt like I fit in with athletes. Like, I'm still finding like, who am I? Where do I fit in? I still don't know that, right? Even like in strength training, I never felt like I fit in with the power lifters. There was just like the mentality behind it. And like music, I felt was like that ultimate freedom of like expression. And that was like that outlet for like the emotional side for me. So sports allowed me like that physical, and then the music gave me like almost the mental health.
Following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
This episode is sponsored by the wonderful and very, very cool brand known as Scatter Joy. So let's talk mental health for a second, because mental health is now more of a prevalent topic of discussion than ever before. However, as awareness increases, so do the associated statistics with it. So while awareness is crucial, it alone does not drive change. And that change is where our new partners in the Scatter Joy enter the picture. So what is it? Well, the Scatter Joy Project is a local organization here in Columbus, Ohio, that transcends the role of a nonprofit. It's more of a movement designed to bridge this gap that people need to get help with their mental well-being. They're fueled by a belief in intentional conversations, raised voices, dismantled barriers, and enhanced accessibility. Its goal is to make mental health care just more affordable for everybody. They're down for the cause and looking to support, among other things. They, of course, sell apparel, with 100% of the profits funding their crisis text line, their own network they put together to help people find the mental health help that they need, and their very own therapy fund. So whether you're looking to get some help, or you want to donate and help support the cause, or you just want to pick up a piece of their really rad apparel that all goes towards the cause, absolutely look into Scatter Joy. So if you want to find out more about them, you can just go find them on Instagram at The Scatter Joy Project, or you can find them online at thescatterjoyproject.com. This episode is also sponsored by CrossFit Gahanna. Now, this is a place that maybe you've heard me talk about on this show before. That's because it's the gym that I go to almost every day. And yes, I know what you're thinking. CrossFit? Ross, what the heck are you trying to sell me on right now? Listen, I promise it's not as crazy as it sounds or often looks. Legitimately, it's not. If I can get started in it, anybody truly can. For real though, CrossFit Gahanna has become one of my favorite places. And it's not just because of like going in and tossing weights or cool gym moves or whatever. It's because this gym has a community unlike any other that I've ever experienced. In effort to just keep this short and sweet, I'll give you the rundown. You can drop into the gym anytime, whether it's for a class or just to do your own thing in open gym. And you can also get 24-hour access if you become a member, which is pretty dope. But they've also got classes for just all skill levels, beginners to seasoned vets. There's something here for everyone because honestly, CrossFit is for everyone. But again, my honest selling point more than anything for these guys is the people. The coaches and the community here truly feels like a family. I've never felt that at any other gym that I've ever been to, and it's a big part of what keeps me personally coming back. So if you want to check it out, they're located in, of course, Gahanna, Ohio. Follow them at CrossFit Gahanna OH or hop over to CrossFitGahanna.com for all the information you need to get your foot in the door and on a path to your fitness journey.
So why wasn't that a further pursuit? Like, was it just like a high
didn't
school
seem realistic,
that,
right? Like, I guess I had no one to like push me toward. Not that that's anybody's responsibility but my own. But like growing up, the thing was you go to college. You know, neither of my parents had degrees. Like that was the thing back in the early 2000s. You go to college, you get a degree, you get a good job, and it's like beaten into your head. And you know the music thing, it doesn't look it's that whole like, it's tough. Like like anything we're doing is tough. It doesn't matter if it's music or what you're doing, what I'm doing now. So I just didn't seem practical. It just didn't seem like I'm never gonna be Kirk Hammett from right. Like there was just never that. I guess that mentor, someone to drive and push me. So it was like, okay, I'm going to college.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was also part of me, I've always wanted to help people. And I felt like I would do more by being able to help people than by creating, like there was always like a deep seed in me that I didn't know what capacity at that time, but to help people. And that I think was bigger for me in going after that than like music.
Yeah. Okay.
There was like not a toss up between the two, but
right.
I just felt like I was supposed to do something else or something different.
So what was the balance like that, or what was the balance like within that time frame of like choosing to go to college? Because half of it is, it feels like the obligation. It feels like there's the pressure, the classic pressure, right?
Yeah.
We're graduating high school. You got to go to college, pick a job, and that's the rest of your life. Go do it. How much of it was that, and then how much of it was, I feel like I do have this deeper purpose to help people, and I think I can uncover that through college. Like, was that kind of what you were weighing out?
I never wanted to go to college.
Okay.
But that's what you're supposed to do. And like my best friend at the time was like, hey, we can go to like Eastern Michigan together and like in-state tuition. I was like, oh, cool. Like, whatever. So I went for a year, and that was the same year I joined the band. So I actually then moved back home and did another year at Cleveland State. And it was still like, I felt like I was wasting money on school because I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. And I feel like that's not, I really don't think that's fair to put like someone that just come out of high school and putting all that pressure on them. Like, you have to get a degree and you have to choose your career for the rest of your life. It's like, you look at my resume, it's like, it looks like I can't hold a job. But someone I was interviewing with, they said it's just skill acquisition you have. It looks like you have experience. So it was 2 years into college, I took a break. I was a paramedic firefighter up in Cleveland for a couple of years to kind of reset. That was helping people. It was like my first job to actually helping people that I wanted to try. Did that for a couple of years, and then it was like, okay, I'm going to go to pre-med, going to go that route. And I was like, I can't do that. So then I just shifted my degree to, honestly, I had a photography business at the time. And my buddy got a coaching job at our high school. I was like, oh, like I'll shoot shoot the kids, right? Like pictures, parents will eat them out. This was before everyone had a camera. So I sold pictures on, I think, not Shutterstock. I don't know. I set up a website and sold pictures to the website, but then they got like their ass kicked against their rivals. Like, I work out, I can be a strength coach. And that was kind of like, I pitched him this idea, like, hey, I like read all these articles online with no experience, and I pitched him like, this is what I want to do. He's like, great. Showed up. There was like 60 kids in the gym, and like to me that was, I don't know. I felt like if I always said like I could do this job and not get paid. That's how much I like love coaching and helping people. Like obviously I have to get paid because I have responsibilities, but if I didn't, I would do that for free. Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Like in some of the schools around here is like, how can I give back? Because that's the high school kids have like kind of, there's a part of me that really wants to help high school kids. I know I'm like tangenting everywhere. So yeah, it was like that moment when I walked into that gym and there was all those like kids just, and he's like, here you go. And I'd never coached before, and I looked and felt like I knew what I was doing. Obviously very rusty, very new, like never done this before, but it just felt right. Yeah. And nothing ever felt right up to that point. Like thinking of like a career, like music never felt like that's what I should be doing. When I walked into that gym and got that opportunity, I was like, this is it. It's coaching.
The next few chapters are coaching within like strength conditioning and everything? Is that
yeah, so I got my degree in health and human performance. Okay. So I stopped being a medic, got my degree in health and human performance. And then strength and conditioning is just a mess of a career, of a profession. You have like two options. You can go coach at the colleges, or you can go in the private setting, or if there's a handful of high school jobs. It's like 70-hour weeks and like 30, 40 a year. And they want you to have like your master's degree and all this other stuff. And it's like, they want you to intern for free. And it's like, so yeah, it was just, I was at the college level. I moved down to Columbus, helped open up a gym, did that for 5 years, went to Atlanta for a little bit, came back to Cleveland, got my massage license, and just kind of been ebbing and flowing with what it is I do, want to do, how does that look. Right. I love strength and conditioning coaching, but I can't do it 30, 40 hours a week because that's the other thing is like I can't massage 30 hours a week because I'd get bored or burned out. Can't coach 30 hours a week. I can do a little bit. I can do a little bit. So that's kind of like how the business is set up right now because I'm on my own. Do a little strength and conditioning, do a little bit of massage, do a little bit of breath work, do a little bit of... So because my brain operates differently, it allows me to like not get bogged down. They're all related, but I can do a little bit here, and it keeps me like, I guess not sane, but
yeah. But the way that I describe that from my side of things, like the reason I do 100 different things is like, you know, I believe in the like fill your cup sort of analogy and all that sort of stuff of like, okay, what's bringing you joy, what's bringing you fulfillment, what's keeping you going, what's balancing you out. And for me, like I can identify like, okay, I can do several different things in several different ways, but I know that I'm the connector point. I'm the core piece of all of these things, right? They're all rooted in my love for storytelling, or my love for connecting with somebody, or my love with, you know, helping somebody, or whatever it is. And I can identify, okay, I can kind of pivot from each of these things on a weekly, if not daily basis, because I'm getting something out of all of them. Like, does that make sense on your side of things? Like, it's less about like the casual label that a lot of people would look at of like, again, you're supposed to get the name tag that says you do this thing and you do that thing. How could you do this thing too? Like, that's so confusing. Like, I know someone could look at the things that I do and be like, okay, Ross has a podcast where he sits down and he has these like deep dive life talks with somebody and they're all like serious and all this sort of stuff. But then he has a comedy podcast with like vulgar poopy fart jokes all over it. Like, these things don't match. Well, they do because they're both extensions of me. Yeah. And they both fulfill me in different ways. And I feel like that's exactly the thing. It's like there's nothing wrong with finding all of the different things that you want to do and just doing a piece of all of them, whether it is a career, whether it is a job, anything else. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, that balance, I think, is probably one of the biggest things that I feel like I've personally uncovered of helping me build confidence, helping me understand more of who I am and what I want to do. You don't know until you try. You don't know if you like something or don't like something until you give it a shot to then know. Now, in finding that clarity, building that balance. You've mentioned a couple times that things like the weight room and music like saved your life. And we've talked about the I guess mental weight of a lot of the stuff of like growing up and just figuring out who you were and all this sort of stuff. I want to dive into the mental health side of things a little bit on, I guess, walk me through that side of the story. When does a mental health, I'll just say for the sake of asking the question, when does a mental health issue feel like it begins to pop up for you? When is it something that you can identify of, and I feel a little off, feel a little weird. I feel like I need to give myself more of these things to better myself, to keep myself balanced. Like, what does that look like for you?
I think the hard part is like, what is mental health? And how are we diagnosing mental health? Right? Like, and that's, if you look at how they like diagnose mental health, they just look at the way that someone's behaving and listening to what they're saying. But to me, through my lens and perspective, the body doesn't operate. Those are just outputs, right? The body's responding to inputs. So the question is like, okay, depression and anxiety aren't really. I don't like the term mental health issues, like, because we don't go physical health issues, like mental health. Ooh, we don't. It's, I think you have to look at the whole body. Right, that was the thing, is like, I'm depressed and I have anxiety and like I have suicidal thoughts and I have ADHD. That was a bigger problem, is like saying I have these things, right? Instead of saying, and then being like, why is my body responding this way? Why is it doing this? And I think when you start to look at the physiology, the way like someone's internal things are working, like their nervous system, the way that they're breathing, start looking at lifestyle. So like, if someone's not getting enough sleep, is over caffeinated, isn't eating a lot, isn't on their, and is on their phone a lot, and then they have anxiety, is that really a mental health disorder? Or is that, and I'm not a mental health therapist, I don't have trainings in it, this is just like depression and anxiety are responses in the nervous system. Like, those are normal things where we should feel, because like, literally the word emotion has motion in it. So to me, that was like, you're feeling this way because your body and your brain are trying to get you to do something, right? Like, if you're not eating well enough, if you're not sleeping well enough, your body's anxious, asking you to do something. So that's kind of how I've started to view it, is like, okay, what's my body trying to tell me? What is, like, emotions come and go, thoughts come and go. Like, so like, what actually is mental health? I don't know. What is that? I don't know. But I know what the brain is, and I know what the nervous system is, and I kind of think it operates on inputs and outputs. And if I don't like the outputs, I got to change the inputs, right? Like, that's kind of where why am I feeling depressed and anxious? Well, you're drinking all the time, you're, not sleeping well, you're not eating well, you stopped lifting weights. Like, maybe that's your body saying like, hey, cut this out and like get your stuff together. So, mental, that's why I tell people, like, let's just take the mind out of this. We're just going to look at the body and the way it operates and like start to teach you how this works. And this is what your respiratory rate means. This is when you breathe like this. This is what this means. Like, anxiety is actually a fight or flight response to your life. Like, I think it becomes a disorder is because it almost gets out of control. It becomes your go-to response for everything. So anxiousness continues to creep up, and you start to ingrain that pattern. So now anxiety is like easy to tap into. But I don't think anxiety is a disorder, but it can become one, right? So when that's everyone that has anxiety, like, we don't need to medicate them and put them in talk therapy. Maybe they need to look at their lifestyle a little bit. Maybe they need to eat a little better, take a walk, get some sleep, cut out the cat. You know what I mean? Like, so my perspective on what mental health has changed immensely, because growing up, it was like, you went to the talk therapist and you talked about things, but no one ever gave me like things to do. No one taught me. They just like analyzed and like, I don't know, like the talk therapy thing was weird for me. I had bad experiences with it growing up. I went to quite a few for myself, family, like with my brother, like just, so, you know, people are like, you should go see a therapist. I'm like, you know, I had those bad experiences. It's like, no, I think I need to like take care of this first. I need to like learn about what I'm working with here. And that was always, I have an innate like curiosity for how the body worked. Mm-hmm. How do these things work? How do they interplay with each other? Like, can I control them? Yeah. And that was like, oh, now I'm controlling things.
Yeah.
Depression doesn't control me. Anxiety doesn't control me. Like, I have a brain that operates different, that people say, oh, that's an ADHD brain. Like, I just have a brain that works differently. Like, I feel everyone's brains are like that. Mm-hmm. I think we're all neurodivergent to some degree, and it's okay, right? Like, it's just your brain. So, like, learning to work with it and operate with it is, like, that's kind of, to me, is what mental health is learning to, like, work with your body and, like, listening to what it's telling you so you can give it what it's asking for.
Mm-hmm. I think the action part is huge. Of a lot of what you're talking about is, again, the outputs and the inputs and all the like, what actions are you taking? And that, I mean, even for me, in any of those, you know, journeys, battles, whatever you want to call it, like that I've experienced, like, I didn't notice things change until I invoked a change, until I took some sort of an action. And it was not one action. It wasn't just, I ate a little bit better and everything was cured. It wasn't, oh, I started going to the gym and everything was cured. It wasn't, oh, I started chasing my dreams and doing videos or whatever, and then it was cured. Like, yeah. I say all of that in sort of a little bit of a sarcastic way because I do tend to believe, and I know because I've had these conversations, or not that I know, but I feel that, like, I feel like everybody tends to look at that, you know, we mentioned it earlier, like the quick fix, the one-stop shop, the like, well, once I start doing this, I should get this result, and if not, then it doesn't work. And for me, that's what I identified is a lot of what you were saying of, like, I had to reevaluate what are a lot of the actions that I am taking. What does my environment really look like? How can I control my narrative as much as humanly possible? And I can acknowledge, like, I haven't been diagnosed with anything. I've also never been to a doctor since my parents stopped having me go. So, you know, I'm working on being a real adult here. But, you know, I've never been diagnosed with anything, right? To attach a label to a way that I'm feeling or anything like that. But I would venture to guess, you know, that I have the heavy bouts with depression. I've got some of the, you know, bipolar, whatever it is, right? There's a few things that I've seen and heard that people have that are real big labels nowadays that I could say, I'm pretty sure I've got some of that. And that has led to some very, very awful and dark times where, you know, you said this earlier, you know, there have been those moments absolutely where I have not wanted to exist anymore at all and really, really wanted to know if there's an easy way that I could solve that problem, right? But I also identified and have since then identified, how can I combat that? What actions and what steps can I take to get around that? And it doesn't mean that it makes it go away. This is another big thing with, like, the mental health or, you know, whatever we want to label it, conversation, is I think that, again, people look at the Band-Aid on a broken window mentality of, here's a solution, it should solve it, and if it doesn't, then it's wrong and it was never going to work in the first place. When, again, I'm going to try one thing and expect all the results to be solved. I had, you know, a somewhat of a strange conversation with a friend in recent history about both of kind of our mental health battles, issues, whatever, right? Of what we've kind of been through. And my side was, yeah, I think we can learn to take control of a lot of these things, and it is up to our actions that kind of dictate how we're going to consistently feel. But that doesn't mean that we get rid of that emotion. It doesn't mean that if I just work out a bunch that I'm never ever going to feel a sad day again. That's absolutely going to happen. But I know how I can equip myself with the tools to combat that, to get that under control. Where he kind of, I think, landed more on the side of, no, you're wrong. This is just how it is. Because I was told that I was labeled with this. That's what I'm living with. And while I get what you're saying, that's incorrect because I have this no matter what I do with those other things. And I think it's such an interesting, I guess, conversation of why the action taking point might be so overlooked? And I'm curious to know, and I don't even know what question I'm forming out of this necessarily, but I'm curious to know like your thoughts on, I guess, leaning more into the importance of taking those actions and the importance of being able to acknowledge that, and I would assume you would agree, but if you don't, absolutely correct me. Like, I would assume that you would agree that, hey, we can take all the positive actions and do all the great things, but that doesn't mean the issues, the problems, the whatever is just gone, right? Like, it doesn't
I
mean...
think that's is looking at those as like issues or problems. Like that's, that was it. Like, everyone else's voice replaced mine. So my thoughts weren't even my thoughts, yet I was telling myself I was these things and that was causing this depression. Okay, well, I'm in control of my thoughts. Right? I don't know. It's just like, I don't like labels. I guess it's because I was labeled so early. Like, people are like, who are you? What do you do? I'm like, I'm just me, man. I'm just doing my thing. Like, if you're the ones that want the labels, everybody else wants a label. And it's funny you were saying that. Like, my mom has had anxiety for 30 years. She's been on anxiety medication for the whole thing, and she's like, they have to keep changing the medication or upping the dosage. She's like, I don't understand, I still have anxiety. I'm like, because you're not doing any of the other things. Like, the anxiety is literally trying to help, and now like anxiety is like on speed dial for her response to like everything in life. And like, it's just, this is what I've gotten to witness, and I'm like, I don't want to choose that. And like, a lot of family members like choosing to like, depression's normal. Feel that. I want you to feel. Like, I had my wife and I had a very trying couple of weeks, like stress, like there were some tears that were shed, like depression, like shit was hard, right? But that's why we do all the other stuff, is to prepare for that stuff. That's why I train. That's why I do the breath work. That's why I study. That's why I take care of my brain, and so I can show up for them. And, one of my sayings is like, hook future you up. Right, so that right now is future me is because I did all these things, and Ross is like, hey, I want to talk to you about these things. It's like, cool, like, right, like, what is future you? What is it? Who is that you want to become? Are they depressed? Are they sad all the time? Are they anxiety ridden? Are they not doing the thing that they love? Or are they pursuing the life that they want? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they like doing things that fulfill them? Like, you have a choice. And I mean, especially if you're listening to this and like you live wherever, like even in the United States, like you have a choice. You don't have to be that person anymore. Is it easy? No, it's not. It's not. But it's only been 8 years really since I started like the mental health journey. And to me, like, okay, it's only been 8 years. Like, I think that's the other thing, is people get wrapped up on like how long something might take. Like, it takes what it takes. Don't put like a deadline or a time on it. And I heard a quote, like, the goal of like health isn't to win. The game of health isn't to win, it's to stay in the game. Same with business and marriage. Like, so like, I don't want to love my parents, but the way you guys went with your choices, that's like a blueprint. I don't want to do that. So I choose not to follow that. I choose not to think like that. I choose to ask better questions. And I don't know, people, and I've found like they're really attached to those labels, man.
Yeah.
That depression, anxiety, ADHD, whatever diagnosis you got, people are, even with pain and injury, people are so attached to a diagnosis as that's what their problem is. And if I can just fix this is going to fix everything. It's like, no, you're a whole person. And I think that, that's part of where my care and treatment is. I'm treating the whole person in front of me, not just like the single issue.
Right.
And I choose not. It's hard. It is hard, but it's supposed to be hard. I don't like saying it's hard. Like, this is just the life I've chosen for me. Like, this is more appealing to me than like the other side.
Do you think, and I really don't, anybody listening to this, I don't want this question to come off as like harsh or uncaring, and maybe it won't, I don't know. But like, do you think sometimes accepting the label of I am depressed, that's just it is just the fact of accepting that label is just easier than really truly acknowledging the root problem and doing something to learn to live with depression, operate with depression, understanding that, I had a guest on long time ago at this point on this show, but something she said always stuck with me about, something like depression and that label. And it is basically to avoid the label of even the way that people own those labels. Instead of saying, I am depressed, it's, I have depression. And I can do things to operate with that and around that and keep it under control and blah, blah, blah. But I think a lot of the times for people, it may just be easier to say, yep, I'm depressed. That's me. I'm embodying it now. I'm literally verbally saying that that's who I am, not just something I have or something I'm dealing with. Like, do you think that maybe for most people it's easier to find the label because the label feels like an answer to the problems and I don't need to look any further for the actual solution? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Again, not a mental health
of course,
professional.
Of course. I mean, well, we are on a podcast.
Just want to make that clear before someone's like, hey.
Yeah.
Like I was saying with like anxiety, same thing happens with like depression. It's like anything else. The more you do something, the more it becomes ingrained in the brain as like it wires itself. And if depression is always your go-to, like it's going to be then. And then you look at the stuff like they're consuming, the people they talk to. That's when it starts to turn into like an actual disorder, and they need actual like a help that I can't provide. Like they need. But if you're like, yeah, everyone's depressed. We've all felt it, right? Like it's normal. That's the thing, is like normalizing this stuff, talking about it, like making it okay to feel. It depends on like what book you read. Like there's up to 500 different emotions. Like I want to feel all of those because to me that's the human experience, right? I don't want to be just depressed or just anxiety ridden or like whatever. I want to feel them all. But that's the thing, is like feel, and I can choose, like the emotions come, but then you can choose how to process that. Like be sad, but then it's like what you do next is what matters. Be depressed, but then what next is what matters. And like, just want to reiterate, can become a disorder, and I can't speak for them because I've never had it to that. I may have. I just didn't go get diagnosed or get help for it. I was like, I'm going to take control of this. If you ask my wife, it probably was like, that was a bad situation. Not bad, but it just wasn't in a good place. Mm-hmm. And I probably should have got help. But I didn't. I just made a decision. I'm not going to let a label affect me. I'm no longer going to tell myself like I am depressed. Like I'm going through a little bit of depression right now. I'm having a little bit of anxiety, right? I'm having some depression, right? And just being very careful with how I talked to myself. And that's kind of what changed. Like, okay, what you're feeling is normal. Just feel it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do anything. Just feel it. Right? And so I don't know if people know that the solutions are available to them. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't, what are people's upbringings? What do they think they need? Right? Like, you can't cure depression. You're always going to have it.
Right.
Because it's normal. Like it's, so there's no cure for it. It's learning to work with it. It's learning to work with the anxiety. People are like, use your ADHD as your superpowers. Learning to work with the brain that you were given. And to me, that's a lifelong endeavor. That's an everyday thing. There's no quick fix for that. It's continuing to show up. Like I didn't work out for 4 days. My brain's like, hey, I hate you right now. Like,
right.
go train. Like, that's listening to your body. I'm doing it long enough. So you start to listen. You know what it's asking for. Like, hey, we're stagnant. We got to move. We got to go. We got to do. But there's other times to sit still. And people have a lot of trouble doing that.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to dig into, and obviously share what you want, and we don't dive into whatever you don't want to share. But like during the heaviest time, right? You were, I guess, if I'm piecing the story together correctly, you had like been kind of doing and learning a lot of these things, and then that time period still hits. Like, what was that like for you? And whatever, if you want to call it like the lowest point or the whatever, like. How did you navigate that? And what did that feel like going through that, even though like you feel like you maybe had some of these tools already, but we're still feeling these things? I feel like that's the hardest battle sometimes, is when we do feel like no, I've experienced this. I've been through it. I've learned some new things, but I'm still getting hit by it. And if it's a powerful enough hit where it's taking you low enough to where you are at that point where you're like, maybe this whole thing ain't, all it's chalked up to be in this, let's get out of here. Like, what was working through that at that point in time like for you?
So I mean, there was a lot career-wise going on. So I'd been a strength and conditioning coach for like 6 years up to that point. Helped build and start a gym. Like, we grew it exponentially. And the guy who I had built it with was like a mentor to me, except for when I decided to leave. And I was very qualified for a lot of the jobs I applied for. But for some reason I wasn't getting those jobs. And that's kind of when it started to like, I have 6 years of experience. I have a degree. I have these licenses. I've done I've networked. I've done the things that I was told I was supposed to do. And I remember calling the guy. I was like, hey man, like, it took a lot. So he had helped a lot of other coaches that came through the gym get jobs elsewhere. And I called him and I was like, hey, like, I need help, man. Like, I can't find a job. Like, is there anything, like, I helped this guy build, like, his business, which is still running today. And he goes, you might want to go get your master's degree. And, like, to me, that was like, dude, that hit so hard because, like, I thought not that I expected anything in return. Mm-hmm. It's just that I did give so much of my time and effort to like building something for him that when he was like, no, there's nothing I can do for you. But then even to this day, he continues to do things for like, I don't think we've ever like reconciled or like talked about that. But that my wife and I were in Atlanta at the time, and my buddy Brett, like, I was at a low point down in Atlanta, and he said, hey, you can come coach with me. So I can't pay you. But like, to me, that was like a godsend. Like, I was coaching, like, it kept me busy. But then like when we got back up to Cleveland, I still couldn't find a job coaching. And I was working at a pizza shop at like 33 years old, man. Like, I was embarrassed as shit. Like, here I am with a degree, with everything, all this experience, and here I am making pizzas. And I am very thankful for that experience. Ohio Pie. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but Ohio Pie. That was a great experience because I eventually, once I snapped out of things, I was like, all right, what can we learn from this? How can we use this to our advantage while I was finishing school? And that was like, and then the other thing was my wife was like, hey, I want to get married. And I was like, to this? You want to get married to this? Like, this is a shit show. Like, you sure? But it was the fact that she wanted to marry me was the other thing. It was like, all right, if you want to have kids, you're going to have to teach them and show them. Again, like my parents did what, I don't know, best they could. Mm-hmm. But no one taught me how to, I guess, like, take care of a woman and be a husband and be a father. And like, I look at my dad's relationship with his dad and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. But then it came to, I can be different. I can change this. So it was knowing that I have to teach my kids about emotions. I have to teach them about how to control themselves and like how to respond and like how to feel things. Like, I want them to feel everything and like be frustrated, but I have to be the one that's leading the way and setting that example. And that's the question is like, okay, well, is your behavior right now worth emulating? Because your kids are going to emulate all of your behaviors. They're literally like walking miniature yous. It's incredible. And that's kind of like where things started to shift. So I was like, something's got to change. Like, you got to take control of this. Like, stop blaming the guy, your mentor. Stop blaming everybody else. It's like a victim mentality. It's essentially, if it was, woe is me, no one believes in me, like, look at me working at a pizza shop, like, boo-hoo. And it's like, dude, get over it. Like, if you don't like it, change it. Do something today to help you tomorrow, future you up tomorrow, right? And you just treat every day like day one. Wake up, do it again, do it again, do it again. Like, it's boring and monotonous sometimes, but those are like some of the things that kind of, you hit these low points, but I guess, I don't know, they're really low points. We're going through some heavy stuff that you needed to figure out. And my wife and future kids kind of like, and the people I've never met kind of like pulled me out of that. And it's like, I owe it. I don't know if I owe it, but like, people need me. My future kids are going to need me, like, to show up and be the best dad that they deserve. That was still is a big driving force. I always knew I wanted to be a dad. Like, I still don't know what I want to do for a career.
Right.
I was very clear. I didn't even want to get married, but having kids was like something I knew I was put on this earth to do, was to be a dad.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing I ever was 100% sure about.
Right. I mean, I don't have kids, and I love the stuff that you share online, honestly, about parenting. I literally do. Because I'm just like, this is so interesting and fascinating. What a cool perspective, and just great reminders. And again, I have nowhere to put it right now necessarily, right? Of like, oh, I'm learning this thing, and how can I, but it's like, it's still like, as an outsider to your life and your relationship with your kids and all this sort of stuff, like, I love seeing all the stuff that you share. And obviously you just talked about some of it there. But yeah, I love getting to see the balance that you have with that, and also the acknowledgement of like, yeah, today was a hard day.
It is.
Like today,
hard is contextual. What's hard for you and what's hard for me are going to be two different things. Like, if you're not a parent, you have no clue. And that's like, everyone's like, you guys don't understand how hard it is. We're like, you guys got through it. Like, I looked at my mom, I was like, you guys did it. Look, you did it just fine. And then you get into like, this is hard. This is really hard. And it's not necessarily like being a parent is hard. It's like everything else that we have to do on top of being a parent. It just adds this whole nother layer, or this challenge to it. So like, yes, an emotional 2-year-old having a breakdown because you won't build the right tile structure, but you don't know what he's talking. So he's frustrated and he's crying, and you're like, you're trying not to cry, and your wife's crying. It's like, Jesus. It's everything else. It's work. So like, we don't have childcare. I don't believe in working more to pay someone else to watch my kid. Like, I had kids, I'm going to watch my kids. And people are like, oh, you're so lucky, like, privileged. Like, no, we set it up this way. Like, I could say the same to you. Like, you work a 9 to 5, you don't have to stay at home with your kids all day. Like, how lucky are you, like, to be able to afford childcare? Yes, we have a babysitter that comes twice a week who keeps my 2-year-old busy so my wife can work for a couple hours. So she doesn't cook, she doesn't clean, she just makes sure he doesn't die. Yeah. So parenting's hard. But it's the most, that was the other thing, is like, I wanted to be a dad that shares the stories to make, because I feel like a lot of guys are hesitant to become dads, is either we didn't have a good father figure, or like, a lot of stuff with parenting, they don't talk about fathers, but we understand how important they are. I think we need to maybe talk about them. Being a dad's amazing. It's unlike anything, like, it's the coolest thing in the world. And it's the best. There's nowhere else to describe it. First year is tough because baby just wants mom, and you're kind of like, okay, I was replaced. Like, those are my boobs over there, now the kid's on them. Like, and the kid's like looking at you like, hey, these used to be yours. But being a dad it's very special, and I don't. Knowing that the moments are fleeting and they're only going to be this little for so long. Like, if I didn't do all this work prior, I don't know if I'd be the dad. I don't know if I'm a good dad. I think I am. But like, just being able to put my phone aside and just be with my kids and just be there and see the world through their eyes, this wonderment, this amazement. And like, I talked about it the other day, was my 2-year-old gets so excited about every little thing, like the bird, the cone, a truck, the grass, the sticks. Like, he's like, Dad, look at this. And it's like, there is so much excitement in this little kid's life for all these little things that most adults don't get that excited about one thing on a daily basis. And I think like all the secrets to life are in childhood. It's what I'm coming to learn. As like all these little things, we all have those little things to be excited about. If we would just take a step back and look around, like, there's so much to be excited about, right? yeah, money, yeah, this, yeah, that, but like, look at the birds. Right? Like, look at this leaf. Like, take a minute and just be, and I love the mess. I love the mess because that's their childhood.
Yeah.
It's right in front of me. And it's just like, this will be gone one day. It'll be sooner than you think. Like, they're going to, do their own activities and start having their own friends. So like these first 5 years, I made sure I was going to be home to watch them grow up. So that business can go on not the back burner, but it's not the most important thing because they're going to get in their activities, and now I'm going to have free time to maybe pursue my music career. No, to work on my business.
How, like, I'm going to ask a question that I know you're going to be like, dude, I don't have a clear answer for that. But like, I'm just curious of like, when moving forward, how are you trying to approach the balance of, I'm going to make this whole business and self-employed entrepreneur thing, I'm going to make that work, while, yes, of course, being a good parent and being as good as I can, and also being present in my own life and all this sort of stuff. Like, do you have an answer for like that question of how are you pursuing that moving forward? And I'm asking that almost from a selfish place, right? Of, I feel like this is one of my super long-winded questions, so gear up. We'll get back to the question in about 10 minutes. I feel like I'm in a period of life right now where it's not that vastly different from things I've been doing since pursuing self-employment, over a decade ago. But I'm identifying right now that I feel like I'm living what I would deem, kind of just to be funny, a dangerous lifestyle. Because you said this a few moments ago, my number one concern is not money. My number one concern is not success. And also success is self-defined, so that can look different to everybody, right? So my version of success isn't having the most stuff, living the most lavish life, having the most money, all this sort of stuff. It's everything we've been talking about throughout this episode. What's more things I want to do? What are more things I want to experience? What are more people that I want to connect with and help and, whatever it may be? And I've been kind of having a little bit of the battle where, not that I think I should be doing the opposite, but that it feels like I should be. Where it feels dangerous to say, on one hand, I need clients and no one wants to pay me for this creative work, and the world is kind of shifting in a weird way right now where people do not care about marketing and branding and creative work. So it's sort of dying, and there has to be a pivot made. And while I'm simultaneously like, yeah, I need to make that pivot because I need to make money and I really want these business solutions to pop up and I need to make those things happen, it's almost equally, if not offset, on the balance of, I literally am just like, what do I want to enjoy doing today that doesn't have anything to do with money? And I feel like sometimes it's a slippery slope where I'm like, yo, reel yourself in. Like, you need to sell a new client. You need to get a new client, pal, before you start another podcast. What are you doing? But again, that, I keep saying that, there are a lot of things throughout your story that I'm like, oh man, we are eerily similar in that way. We talked about this earlier. I feel like the way I was in school is the way I am in life when it comes to a job or a career. I'm like, what's the point in doing it that way? I want to do it this way because this way makes me feel better. And I want to have a life that makes me feel better or feel good, not one that I have to struggle for those tiny moments of light, right? Because I say this a lot on this show. My perspective is like life's default setting is set at highly difficult, right? Use a video game analogy here. Its setting is very, very difficult. Bad things are going to happen. Shitty things are going to happen. We're going to have some of the worst experiences. I said this on a recent episode, but like, you and I right now probably have yet to experience some of our worst days ever. Yet. And we've had some terrible days. But there's still more to come, unfortunately, because that's what life is. And so for me, I can identify that life's default setting is extremely difficult. So why would I do anything to make it more difficult for myself? And so back to the question that I've been setting up is, how do you navigate that balance? Or even whether it's right now or looking forward, how do you feel like you're trying to navigate that balance of, I got to be somewhat my version of success with my career. I got to make money. I got to be able to pay the bills. I got to have more clients. I got to pivot when needed. But also, I want to live a joy-filled, fulfilling, present life. Like, what does that look like for you? Or when you think about that, what comes to mind?
I mean, really, it's getting clear on what's the life you want to live, right? And communicating with your partner, for me, with my wife, like, what do we want to be doing? What are the things we want to do? And then, like, what's the minimum amount I need to bring in right now for us to do those things now? At the same time, slowly building the business. Like, the business is still so in its infant stage. I mean, I've had my own business for probably 5 years, so it's given me multiple streams of revenue. And then I also have my massage therapy. I can go to a spa and get a massage therapy job to, like, okay, if I need to get a little extra money, like, okay, I just make a phone call and, like, they're like, yeah, we can use you. Like, I have a couple this week, right? Just so it's getting clear on what the business looks. So I don't believe in balance. I think that's to everyone. How do you balance everything? Like, you don't. There's no balance. You create the balance. I've created the balance per se, and we're finally in a flow. But it is dangerous. I think about that all the time. I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, because every night I'm scared to death. If I lose 2 clients, 3 clients, oh shit, what am I going to do? Right? I don't even know what it is that I do, and I'm trying to get people to pay me money for something I don't even know what I'm doing. It's a very good business strategy. It's worked so far. Yeah, it's getting clear on who you want to be. I think that was a big thing for me, was like, who do you want to become? Father, husband, business owner, writer, like, kind of these things. What's preventing you from getting there? And what do you need to do to become that person? Okay, start doing those things. Okay, start acting like a business owner. Start acting like a good husband. Same thing. What's the life we want to live? Well, for me, success is just freedom. Freedom to do what I want when I want. I'm not there yet, but I do have a lot of freedom in my schedule to take care of my kids, to call off when I need to. I have clients who are very understanding. I'm also, kind of picky with who I work with. I have an online training business. I've had the same 10 clients for the last 5 years. I don't need to, like, advertise or market that. And then if I do lose one, I usually have one that can come in next. So, like, I've got these multiple streams of revenue in case something gets taken out. Would I be better off maybe focusing on just one thing? Maybe. I don't know. Like, they said, make the thing the thing. Don't worry about it. Just make the thing the thing. But, like, I don't get that excited about business. I just love helping people. That's all I want to do. Like, I have a unique skill set, a very unique skill set that not a lot of people have in Columbus, let alone, I would say, like, the world. I have a different perspective and a different experience. So, like, that makes me, I don't know, what's the word? I don't want to say special, but, like, I have a special gift, and, like, and I'm able to leverage that in multiple ways. So I don't ever, like, panic. My wife does that for me. She panics and worries about, like, the money stuff, and I'm always like, it'll be okay. It'll work out. Like you said, like, your hardest days aren't even here yet. Like, just getting warmed up, man. Like, I'm not even, I don't know. I don't worry. I think that I'm a little more easygoing with that stuff. I just keep doing what you're doing. I don't have time to think about, like, some of that stuff. Like, my wife does that, like, planning shit. What do you want to do? We want a vacation. We want to do this. We want to do that. And okay. She wants to, okay. Like, it's not going to, like, deter what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I stay focused on the task at hand, and it's working. It's just being patient. Patience was always, you need to learn to be patient. Like, no one ever actually taught me what patient meant. Patient means, like, doing everything until the thing actually happens. And it's, filling that time in between from, like, when it actually happens and now with, like, just doing things. And in my head is like, it's going to happen. It's just going to take time. Like, my vision's already happened. Time's just got to catch up to it. So, like, we're just not killing time, but filling the time with meaningful experiences and doing things. And I feel we put too much on the monetary aspect of, yes, I get it. We have to make money. We have to, like, give yourself, but I don't know. I don't worry about too much.
Yeah.
Isn't Guns N' Roses have that, like, worrying's a waste of time. Worrying's a waste of my time. Like, I don't worry about those things. Like, I'm very good at taking my hats off. Husband hat goes on, work hat goes on, like dad hat goes on, and like that's from training my mind and brain and my nervous system and being able to like regulate and like in real time control myself. And here's my schedule. I work these 6 hours. So if you don't have clients, you're trying to get clients. That's so yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your long-winded question.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, we're right on track here. But it is all of those things. Like, that's exactly that dangerous thought that I'm talking about. Like, I feel as though I should feel wrong about thinking that way. Does that make sense?
But why?
And I don't have a why, right? And that's exactly what I'm acknowledging is like, that immediately that thought process kicks in and I'm like, why? Who cares? Right? But there's that like little tick in the back of my head or whatever that's like, you should be working harder. You should be making the money. You should not be sitting and having a joy-filled day right now because if you lose one client, you're screwed this month. Like, but there's just something that has settled into my brain, into my being, where I'm like, so what? So what? And that's why I say, I label it dangerous, right? It's because I'm like, that's a dangerous way of thinking, right?
But my thing is you'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. You didn't make it this far without figuring it out. So you'll figure it. Obviously, be working and be proactive, but like maybe doing the podcast is work though. That is like, it might not be for the payoff's not today. It could be in 5 years, right? Like I think that's the other thing too is like, it is hard, especially like as a new business or like just getting going and trying to gain momentum and like building your brand or reputation and building your client base. Like it takes time. It's going to take how long it takes. Like just keep pushing. Just keep, I think a lot of people just get, me too. You get discouraged. Like, why am I doing this? I'll just go work for someone else and I make good money and like it's not my problem. I'm just unemployable because I see everything like, hey, maybe we should be doing that. Like that happened. That's essentially why I lost my last job. Not lost, but like left my last job was like developing all the lead and marketing strategies. And then there was like, I'm doing all this work and you're not doing anything. I'm just going to go do this on my own. And that's essentially, what I did. So it's, I don't know. But also like the golden handcuff of having a 9 to 5, like to me that's dangerous. That's scary. Mm-hmm. That scares the shit out of me. That's because that's how I was raised. Like you need a job, you need benefits, you got to get your 401k and your medical insurance and this and this and this. It's like, for what? What if something happens? What if something doesn't? Right? I don't. It just never made. And then I just look at my mom and she's like about to retire and like. She's about to die also. So now we just like went our whole life waiting to retire and you hit retirement and you're not probably going to live throughout the rest of the year. Like to me, like, no, I'm going to live now while also building for retirement. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand the concept. Retire from what? My uncle goes, I get to retire soon. I'm like, then what? And he looked at me like, you didn't know how to answer it.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even thought about it. Like, retire from what? Like, I'm just lit. And in 20 years, I'm probably not going to be doing what I'm doing now. I'll probably be making money some other way because that's just scrappy, right? Mm-hmm. It's just being, I don't know. I've never had a lot of money, so like money was never a driving force for me. But I guess having no money could also be a driving force to wanting more money. But
right.
like, my perspective was money never interested me. Mm-hmm. Like maybe it should. Right. I don't know. Like, I make money. I get to do what I want for a living, and that's the other thing. Like, I'm very fortunate. We've had some good like things come up for us, which I feel happens to everybody. Like, I'm very thankful for those things. But in my head, like even without those, we would have figured it out. Like, you don't have a choice. Like, I put myself in this position. I don't really. The choice has been made, right? Like. If this is what you really want, the choice has been made. There's no yes or no. Like, this is what needs to be done to be a good father, husband, business owner. Like, you already made the choice. There's no other choices but just to execute and just do. Just be. Right? Just be you. And everything, I just for some reason really believe in that. Like, just be you and really listen. We all, I feel like, have innate desires that we're born with and like skills. And for a lot of us, it was shut down somewhere along the way in school, telling you like, hey, being a musician is probably not the best idea. And you're like, yeah, you're right. Right? And like, you shut that down. But I feel like we all have that. And like, those are what I'm doing. I have those innate curiosities and desires, and I'm going to feed them. Money's going to come. Money also goes.
Yeah.
Like, it's just this ebb and flow, but the more you do it, the better you get. Start making more money. And, you know, I don't know what the long-term business plan is. I don't know what that quite looks like yet. I mean, we're both at the same gym, and there's a vision there that, you know, I hope to be a part of, for just not only just everything that they're working on there. And it's kind of in line with what I want to do and what my overall vision is. And it was like, holy shit, this kind of, and that's the other thing is like, you have visions. Like, my wife has this vision for something. It's not always going to look how you think it's going to look, and being okay with that, and that it might look differently than what you initially set it out to be, and just be open to those kind of opportunities that do come and present themselves. Right? Like, I always wanted to work with a team. Well, I found one at CrossFit Gahanna. Okay, how do I work? You know, it's like, oh, here it is. It might not be like the team you envision, but here it is. Here's the facility. Like, you just make it work. And like, I don't know, you just, feed your soul. That's it. I just do things that make me, I don't know, happiness is a byproduct, but I just do things that are fulfilling, filling my cup.
Yep.
Right? Like lifting. Like, I stopped taping my training because that's my time. I'm not taping my workouts for you anymore. Like, it was more about creating the content and the actual, like, oh, this used to be your time. You're now using it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm very selfish with my time. Right? Now it's my kids' time. It's these things feed my soul, but they each have a purpose, and that just comes from doing things.
Are you familiar with Ben Nimpton at all?
No.
He's like a speaker of some sort. Did you ever watch or hear of the show The Buried Life on MTV years ago? Okay, so
I don't think so.
I've become a gigantic fan of his in the last handful of years. And I'd always loved the show The Buried Life. And I'm asking that because everything that he talks about and the idea of the buried life is a lot of what we are talking about, of just like living a life that is joyful to you and it's filled with experiences. And he's big on things like bucket lists. And like, that was the idea of the buried life, was they were like, what are things that we would put on our bucket list that we don't think we could achieve? And let's like film a documentary about going and achieving those. And while we're doing ours, let's help other people check some off of theirs. Let's just make a fun documentary out of it. It got picked up, turned into a TV show for MTV and all this sort of fun stuff. But like, the way that he speaks about a lot of this stuff has kind of reinforced ways that I was already thinking about a lot of this. And like you're saying, like, hey, the thing that you envisioned, it might not turn out the exact way that it is, or that you perceive that it was going to be, but it's still a win. And that's one of his big things off this idea of a bucket list, of like, there are ways that you can have these experiences on a bucket list, big to small. And there's different ways that you can check them off. It might not look the exact way that you thought it was going to, right? Like, there was one, and this is a funny one, but like, they had one on their list where it was do a sketch with Will Ferrell, right? So do a comedy sketch with Will Ferrell. Had no idea how they were going to do it. Even when the show existed, they were like, we're not famous enough to hang out with him, whatever. Long story short, they end up at a sports game. They're in, one of the boxes or whatever, and Will Ferrell ends up in the same box. And they're like, "Oh my God, this is the moment!" Blah blah blah. What do we do? But how do we do a sketch with him? And they were like, "Wait a second, let's go ask him if he's down for this." And what they did is they grabbed a piece of paper, and with him, they both sketched like a little comic strip together. And they were like, "Done." I did a sketch with Will Ferrell, right? And there's something about that idea that has honestly like made me look at so many of the things that I do and want to do in a different way, where I've become big on the idea of a bucket list in the last handful of years. And you can label it whatever you want realistically, but the simplest term is a bucket list. And obviously most people look at a bucket list as like the thing you do when you're old and you go skydiving for the, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's more so promoting this idea of like, what do you want to do before you die? Big to small. What are things that you want to experience? And this is like a handful of years ago at this point where, I really started leaning into this idea. But all of it, like, helped me build the lifestyle that I want to live. Again, your question earlier of, like, well, identifying who do you want to be? What sort of life do you want to live? And identifying that as, I want to live a life where I am as happy as possible. Doesn't mean that nothing's wrong, but how can I, if I want to become happier, if I want to have more joy, get my cup more filled up, figuratively, I need to be doing things, I need to be taking actions to make those things happen. And that's been one of my favorite things that I've done in the last handful of years, is start to put together this bucket list of things I want to do or things I want to experience before I die. Ranging from super random stuff to super practical things, like make X amount with a business. Sure, that's one of them. But also do this, like one of mine that I got to check off earlier this year was be a Ghostbuster for a day. One of the most random things. And when I put it on the list, I was like, I don't know, this sounds fun. I have no idea how I would possibly do this. But I want to be an honorary Ghostbuster for a day, right? And again, that's the thing that, a lot of what Ben talks about is just put it on the list. Just put it on the list. Don't think about how it's possible. Don't think about your perfect version of it. Just put it on the list. But also speak these things into existence, which is also why I've been so high on the idea of a bucket list and sharing the ideas and the goals and things that I want to do and hearing what other people want to do to live a more fulfilled life. Is when you speak them into existence, there's a chance that somebody can actually help you do the thing you want to do. That's the whole point. No one knows unless you share it. No one knows what you're going through. No one knows what you want to do unless you share it. And literally, the short of it is, we were having a fun community event here at the studio, and I overhear another filmmaker that came to the event talk about how he is a part of the Ohio Ghostbusters, and they go and they do these public, appearances and all this sort of stuff. And he's showing me all these videos of the suit and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, why would I not tell him about this bucket list item, right? So I told him, I was like, dude, it's so crazy. It's so cool that you do that. It's on my bucket list to be a Ghostbuster for a day. That's so cool that you do that. It wasn't asking a favor even, right? He instantly was like, we're going to make that happen. Of course, I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm going to help you cross that off your list. He's like, you are going to be a Ghostbuster with me for a day. And I was like, okay. So then literally he takes me through all the steps, gets me the custom suit, custom patch, all this sort of stuff I need to do it, right? And of course I'm thinking I'll get together with a group of them and I'll get to be in their photo shoot or something, and hey, that's good enough for me, right? Do a sketch of Will Ferrell. What's it mean? Success is self-defined. So, all right, whatever, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. And literally, we end up, he's like, hey, dude, so the new Ghostbusters movie is coming out. There's one of the premieres here in Columbus. We get to go to. You're going to come with me, and we're going to take pictures with families all day, and then we're going to go watch the movie for free. So, I got to experience what it was like to, in some form, be a Ghostbuster for a day. Because, yes, I'm just, cosplaying as something, right? But got to go to a movie premiere, hang out there all day. And the biggest thing that solidified it for me is the kids in all these families that were coming out after watching Ghostbusters. When they come out of the theater and they see a group of people in Ghostbusters uniforms, well, those are Ghostbusters. We're ready to take a photo with those people. And that is the highlight of my day as a kid because, oh my God, I just got to meet Ghostbusters. That's incredible. So I spent an hour taking photos with families and hanging out and doing all this sort of stuff, and then go hang out and watch the movie. Watching Ghostbusters in a Ghostbusters uniform is a pretty fun experience. So do that if you ever get the chance. But at the end of the day, I literally was like, what a fun fucking random thing. And that does not add to my career. That does not give me money in my bank account. That does not make some amazing, cool connection that makes this crazy life change happen. It's an experience that I spent a handful of one of my days this year being a Ghostbuster. Mm-hmm. And it was just fun. And I say all that to say that, like, everything that we're talking about of figuring out how to live a fulfilled life and figuring out what does life look like for you, that has been one of my biggest things. Is I have, this growing bucket list of not all just things that are materialistic, not all just things that are business successes. It's filled with so many different things of, it would just be fun to do this.
Well, that's what money's for, though. So to me, we're going to use money as a tool to do these things.
Yeah.
To experience life. Like, that's, okay, like, one of my things is, like, I want to learn to ride a motorcycle and buy a motorcycle. So now it's like, when you go to make a purchase with your money, you're like, is what you're buying in line with who you want to become and what you want to do, or is the motorcycle more important? Right? So then that's starting to make better choices and being aware of where you're spending time, money, and resources. Like, I have this list, and what am I choices. You have the money, what do you choose to spend it on? You said the motorcycle is a priority. Why are you spending it on, I don't know,
about
another 12-week education course, right? Like, I don't that's it. To me, is just like, okay, what's the life we want to live? What are the things we want to do? What are we going to do with the kids? Like, kids get a little older, like, there's some experiences I'd like to have, and that to me is like, okay, it's how much money I need, how much does the business need to do, how many clients, like, that's how I look at business. For me, it's to me is I don't know, it's just a tool to live the life that I want. It's not something, I don't know, I'm not building a business to be like a millionaire. It just provides me the life.
Right.
It's a means to, like, live this life, so I get to do what I'm good at, and I also have some things I can fall back onto, like I said. But that's how I look at business. For me, is to afford and do. It's the vehicle. But it also is like a creative process for me. I mean, building a business from scratch and, like, having all these too many skill sets and trying to mash them into a product. Like, to me, like, you talk about, like, music, like, there's a creative process in that, but building a business is a creative process for me. Like, being a massage therapist is an art for me. It's like dancing and moving, and, like, just there's this, I think we talked about it the other day, I'll never know what a massage feels like for me. Like, you get there, everyone gets off the table all excited. Like, to me, those are different. Coaching is an art, all of it. And that was a big perspective shift, is like, don't look at it as your job, look at it as your art. Like, just treat everything you do as, like, art, and you're the artist. Like, it's not always going to be pretty, but, like, just keep painting, keep playing, keep practicing your craft. And that's all it is. It's not about the business, it's my craft. And that's just kind of where business, now I'm lucky I can use my craft to, like, make a living to.
Right.
And that's just how, I guess it's how my brain works. Like, maybe that's thinking dangerously or living dangerously, but, like, I'm an artist. Right. Like, this is my art. This is what I'm good at. This is what I enjoy. And people pay me for it. Not pay me, they invest in my services.
Yes.
It's an investment.
Yes. Quick pivot here, because as we start to kind of wrap up, because I do want to get you out of here, because I know we can sit here for a handful more hours and just talk about every single thought we've ever had in our lives. I want to talk about breathwork a little bit.
Sure.
Because I do feel like that was, firsthand, the little bit of work that you and I have done together, that was such a fascinating experience. I said it way earlier in this episode, of learning, like, how I was breathing and what to do and how it changes things and all this sort of stuff. Like, I guess I don't know what the question is, but I kind of just want to open up the floodgate to that a little bit, of, like, maybe just explain to me, to the people, like, what is breath work, and what's maybe the importance of breathing that we don't know, because it's such a thing that we walk around all day, every day, and we're breathing, and we don't really know what it's doing or why. Like, so I guess open up those floodgates for me a little bit of.
Okay, so part of your nervous system, it's called the autonomic nervous system. It does things automatically, so you don't have to think about them. Heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure, digestion, urination, like, does everything so you don't have to think about it, so you can do higher level things. That's kind of what makes humans this special kind of almost species, is like our brain continues to evolve, but we have, like, this small part of our brain that comes from, like, they call it the reptile brain. That's so we don't have to think about these things. So breathing is an autonomic function. meaning that we don't have to think about it, but we can consciously control it. And that was kind of like what drove me to be like, why did we evolve to consciously control our breath? I still don't have like a clear-cut answer, but when you look at the autonomic nervous system, we have fight or flight, we have rest and digest, right? We have our stress response, and then we have our recover response. And majority of the people are stressed out, beyond belief. Like, they don't even realize it. And like, when you have a stress response, it changes the way you breathe. You start to you breathe more to bring in more oxygen, to create more energy, to essentially fight or flight. But if there's no stressor and you get stuck in that breathing pattern, now you have a breathing pattern that's causing the release of stress hormones, which is then causing these symptoms, which is then causing the breathing pattern to continue, which is then releasing the stress, and it creates this cycle. So people actually get stuck in a stressful breathing pattern. It's like a breathing pattern disorder. So by learning that your breath is directly tied into fight or flight or rest and recover, gives you control over that state. So anxiety is a fight or flight sympathetic response. You're probably going to be hyperventilating. You're going to breathe more with this up here. I know that my inhale is tied into fight or flight, and my exhale is tied into rest and recover. So if I'm feeling anxious, I can leverage my exhale to bring myself down. If I need some energy, I can leverage my inhale and bring myself up. But the problem is like, not the problem, but like these patterns become habit due to stress, being in certain positions for too long. It changes the way their joints sit, which then alters the breathing pattern. So if I'm like in this position and it causes me to no longer use my diaphragm, but now using this, well, now you just made that a stressful breathing pattern, which now causes this whole cat. So like a lot of people's signs and symptoms, GI issues, skin issues, urinary issues, like they have all these symptoms and they're seeing all these doctors and I don't know what's going on. It's like, it's probably because they're stuck in a stressful state, and they probably have a breathing pattern disorder, which is causing the release of these stress hormones. That's causing all of this, like, I don't know how sciencey we need to get, but it causes changes in the blood chemistry, which is then causes the nervous system to respond to more fight or flight. So like a lot of gut issues are really nervous system issues because it's rest and digest. And if you don't ever get in rest and digest, you're probably going to have some gut issues. And it's so simple. To me, it's like, duh, can you imagine if we just taught people this stuff? Mm-hmm. Like, hey, this is your nervous system, and you have these two parts. Your breath's tied into it. You can control your breath to control your state. Like, I know I make it sound so simple, but that's literally what it is. Like, and it's not sexy. It's just breath work. Like, it is. It is just breath work, right? It is. So try it. It is. It's the lowest hanging fruit, in my opinion, to taking complete control of things, to understanding. Like, you can literally tell. I literally judge people how they're not judge, but observe them breathing in public, and like I can see like what's going on. I mean, that's part of half my assessments, watching people breathe.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I came up to you after a class that, my shoulder was bothering me, and Brian was like, go talk to Nick, and I'm like, hey dude, this thing, and then you instantly assessed. You were like, well, I can tell this shoulder is drooping a little bit, which means you're doing this, and then you're hanging this way a little bit, and it looks like you're breathing. And I was like, you just blew my mind.
That's the other part of it too, is that breathing is it's not only like physiological nervous system, but it also affects the way we move, because it's pressure. When we breathe, there's pressure that comes in, pressure, like it's this constant like pressure and volume. So if you're not getting pressure and volume in certain areas of your body, it's going to affect the way the joints move. So like the first thing, hey, like when I was a paramedic, it was like ABCs. Do they have an airway that's open? Yes, cool. Breathing. Are they breathing? Like, oxygen is the most important resource to humans, and it's not gold, it's not time, it's not money, it's oxygen. It's literally the one thing you can't live without, because we need it to create energy to sustain life. And if the mechanics are off, you're not going to be able to move well. If the mechanics are off, you're probably not going to feel well. Like not saying that breath caused it. Like, I think that's like breath isn't a cure-all, but it does help put your body in a position to repair and recover and heal itself. And it's like a cheat code. You can control your state. Like, if you're going through a shitty time, what's the one thing you can control right now? It is your breathing. You're feeling depressed. What's the one thing, like that, like when shit happens, like you always want to look at what you can and can't control. And I can't control like events. I can't even control the outcomes, but I can control like myself. And breathing, like I do it all the time with my kids. Like I can see why parents fly off the handle with their kids and yell at their kids because they're so stressed out. And when you have a screaming 2-year-old at you, and then you've had a 6-month on you, like breastfeeding all day, and now the 2-year-old is screaming, like it's not them being a bad parent, it's their body saying, I can't handle any more stress. So by being able to just go and just pause for a minute and be like, okay, what's the outcome I'm looking for right now? Then it gives you control. Like, I'm in control, right? I control my response. I control, and to me, like that's powerful. Like everyone should know how this works. Like that's like if I can just teach people like the power of just breath and just basic movement, not even going in the weight room, just moving your body daily, which it was designed to do. Like, I feel we would have a lot less chronic health issues. And most chronic health issues are lifestyle based things. Mm-hmm. But you have people stuck in this pattern of stress, not realizing they're stressed, like go, these quick dopamine hits and these quick dopamine falls, like anxiety, no sleep, over caffeinated, not eating well, not taking care of their bodies. Like, yeah, we're going to have a whole host of health issues. So I consider myself a generalist. Hey, are you breathing well? You moving well? You sleeping well? Here's massage to help you relax a little bit. Like, even an injury to your shoulder, it's multifactorial. It's not just like, hey, do these shoulder injury stuff. Like, hey, let's get the rib cage in a good position through breath so the shoulder can move better along the rib cage, and then start to that's another thing we could talk about another time, is just rehab. But yeah, breath. It's not like, I feel like breath, you hear breath work, you think a lot. I hate saying wooey because I feel it's like doesn't give like that type of practice like what it deserves. But there's a lot of breath work, it's like wooey. It's like it has this hippie yoga-y vibe. And for me, I'm just looking at it from like in a physiological perspective. Like, no, this is just how your body works.
Yeah.
There's nothing wooey. Like, we can train this, like train your brain, train your nervous system, and we can do that through breath. Mm-hmm. And that gives you, when I made the connection, like, oh, breath's controlled, connected, this, I'm like, oh, I'm in control. And that was kind of like this moment where like, I'm in control. And that was very freeing for me. And like I have clients who be like, man, I had anxiety all the time, like big interviews or like job interviews, or I gotta give a presentation, I just get this anxiety. And then their gut starts acting up. I'm like, and you give them the breath work to do, and they're just like, I didn't have the problem, right? Like, anxiety is normal, fear is normal, but like, take a deep breath and like actually just look at the situation. Mm-hmm. And then that's how you start to rewire your brain. So the next time you encounter a situation like that, your brain's like, oh, because the brain's a predictive organ. It's trying to predict based on past experiences, like, okay, this happened last time, so now we gotta be prepared quicker for it to happen. But if you don't like the outputs, change the inputs, right? That's, mm-hmm. I don't like the way I'm responding to this situation. Okay, then.
Right.
And again, it does come down to choice, but like when your body's operating on a high level of fight or flight or stress, like it's really hard to make choices. So like when you're just like, just breathe. Follow this tempo, just breathe, do these breath holds, like get in this position and do this, like, and now you can use breath to help movement, people in pain, people who are stressed out. Like, there's just so many health related things that like if we can just establish this is going to help set them up for a better long term.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask a bit of a formal question here, and every time I have anybody who's involved in like the health adjacent world on the show, they always give the caveat of like, well, everybody's different, you can't just, it's not a one size fits all sort of thing. So with that in mind,
breathwork is a one size fits all thing.
Okay.
We're all operating with brains. We're all operating, like, our health conditions might be different, right? But like we both breathe. We both have brains. We both have nervous systems, and they both act a certain way when given different inputs. Like that's just, the brain operates this way. The breath operates this way.
So is that what you would go to if the question being like, anybody listening to this show right now, right? They maybe learned a couple things, they're hearing all this new, stuff. We're getting a little sciencey, whatever, whatever. If they turn off this podcast, right? And they're like, oh, what's something that you would tell somebody that they can apply to themselves to maybe better manage stress, better manage anxiety, whatever it is. If they turn off this podcast right now and they're like, what's something I could start doing tonight, tomorrow, to maybe get some of that stuff under control? Would you go to Breathwork?
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, that's why it's breath and exposure. For me, exposure is like, breath is the foundation, and then when I say exposure, we're using exposure to movement, exposure to ice, exposure to heat, exposure to strength and conditioning. To one, what are the outputs we're looking for, and then we choose your exposure that's best needed. But breath is the foundation. It would be. Just let a breath. Everyone's like, oh, just take a deep. No, let a breath go. Just fucking relax. I don't like when people are like, no, just relax, dude. Like,
right.
But seriously, just let a deep breath go, man, and just relax. Like everyone is so busy and go and stressed out. Like I get people all the time, I'm not stressed. And then I look at how they breathe and I do a couple other tests. I'm like, you're pretty stressed. Like life isn't that serious. Yes, it's hard. It's but we make it harder than it actually has to be. Like that was a big shift for me. Is like life just is. We give it meaning, right? Like, and what's the meaning? How do I want to define it? Like, breathing gives me control over this, which was something I was told I was never going to have, or there's a chemical imbalance, or like there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong with my brain. And to me, that was like part of what I want to do is get into high schools and teach this to kids, because I think it'd be very impactful and powerful, and also teach the educators who, hey, I'm the kid that you said I was this kid that was always in trouble. I was this kid that wasn't going to amount to anything. Who was going to be in jail, right? Like, I'm that kid. And I just feel everyone should know how their body works to some degree, so you can better work with it. I feel we outsource every aspect of our health and wellness to everyone else, when your body's got everything kind of built in to tell you what you kind of need, if you listen. And I guess that's kind of what I help. You listen. I teach you what, not that I'm saying I'm right, but just to help you work through it. I don't ever tell you what your body's saying, but like give you like different perspectives on, but we need a clear place to work from. You can't heal if you're in a stressed out state. Well, find your exhale and we can get into rest and recover, so that can then better help you on your healing journey. If you're always in a stressed out state, you'll never truly heal.
I'm going to steal a question that I heard on a podcast that isn't around anymore. So, hey, maybe it's up for grabs. But I loved it every time they asked it. And I feel like this is a really fun opportunity to present it to you. If you were able to prescribe everybody in the world something that they can do for themselves, take care of themselves, or whatever it is, really anything, I guess, you get to prescribe everybody in the world one thing for the next 30 days and they have to do it. What would you choose?
Go outside. Take your shoes off, put your feet in the grass, and just look. Just be. Like that's, I had that I did mushrooms with my brother once, and that was like when I do mushrooms, I always set like an intention for the trip to learn. I don't just like take them willy-nilly. Like there's just like strategic, like, hey, I'm heading like, and I was stagnant, and the thought of just kept coming up. Just be, like asking all these questions, like just be. And I feel like that, just be you, just be here, right? Like just go outside, take your shoes off, and just be. Don't even, just be. Like don't even think, just be right there for 5 minutes every day for 30 days. That would be Not even breath work. Like, your breathing is going to be fine. And it just being with my kids, I'm outside a lot, and it's like, damn, this life really is great. Like, look at the birds, you start to look at things differently, and just go outside.
Mm-hmm. I love
just
it.
Be like, I think outside can cure a lot. Mm-hmm. Because it'll calm you down, which then will in turn change the way you breathe. So you don't even need to do the breath work. Like, yeah, just go outside, get your feet in the grass.
Last couple things, and we'll wrap this up. When you look back at your journey, and I'm sure there's so many things, so many different chapters of life that we didn't even touch on here in this conversation, because we have went all over the place. We've covered so many different things.
Yeah.
But when you look back at your journey, personally to you, what's the biggest lesson you feel like you've learned?
I think I kind of already said it. Like, life isn't that serious. Like, life just is. It's whatever you want it to make it out to be. Like, I'll use my marriage as an example. Like, I never wanted to get married. I watched my parents, who got divorced after 30 years, just live in this loveless, sexless, cohabitating relationship. Mom had like 7 sisters. They're all like same situation or on their second, third marriage. I'm like, that doesn't look appealing. I don't want that. So I'm not getting married. But that doesn't have to be the way it is. Like, life just is. What do you want it to be? And like, that was like, what do I want it to be? What do I want to? I'm in control. I am in complete control. It's on me. I want that. Like, it is on me. And I don't want, for so long I gave it to everybody else. For 30 years I gave everybody else their opinion, their thoughts, their voice. Like, they lived in my head. No, man. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, that's the other thing. I don't want people, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're okay. You're human. Like, that's part of the human experience, is to feel highs, lows, to be different, and embrace that. Like, just be, like, just be you. And I'm still figuring out who you is, and it's an ever evolving thing. And that's, I think, the best part of the journey is, like, there's no end. You know, that's the quick fix. The 12 weeks to this, the 6 weeks to this. Like, there is no quick fix. It's a lifestyle. It's a choice. It's a commitment. Like, yeah. And stop being so serious. It's just stop. Stop. It's exhausting. That's why I love comedy so much, man. It's just such a breath. Comedy's in such a good place right now, I feel, and it's such a breath of fresh air. Like, life's not that serious. Just all laugh. Like, that's it with the marriage. Is like, one of our things is like, find the bit. When the shit's hard, find the bit, because there's a bit in here somewhere. And that's kind of, you know, where's the bit? It's here. It just gives us a different perspective, like, to not be, obviously be serious when you need to, but
yeah,
I'll still turn a serious conversation into a bit.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Well, whether we end on a bit or a serious note, maybe this is something you've already said, but I wrap up all these episodes with the exact same question. So now I'm going to toss it to you. So right now, I want you to pretend like everybody in the world is listening to you speak. We're throwing logic out the window. They can hear you. They can understand you. You have a live mic attached to everybody. We've already talked about what we would prescribe them. But now let's talk about just one thing you want to tell them. And again, maybe you've already said it. But even if it's re-encompassing all of that, in this moment right now, you can share one thing with everybody in the world. What do you really want them to hear?
It's kind of gonna be 2 things. Don't be an asshole and just love each other. My grandfather taught me that. That was the only, like, big piece of advice he gave me. He said, Nick, don't be an asshole. And he's like, just love everyone. And I really took me a while to, like, just love everyone, because, like, the way I was brought up, people I was around, I had, like, oh, I don't like that person or this. Everyone's going through shit. Everyone's human. We're all experienced. We all have feelings. We all have thoughts. We have emotions. Just love each other. Like, just be understanding and empathetic. Being a paramedic really helped me realize, like, that that just love and take care of the person in front of you. And the world, it sounds, I feel like so like cliche. I feel like a hippie, right? It's like, just love each other, man. But it is like, I don't know, or respect each other or something. Like, just there's so much like, I don't know, negativity or hate in the world. You know, you have the election coming up and it's like, this is gross. Like, do you people not see the way that you're behaving towards another human being because they think differently? Like, that's literally how progress is made, is like, you have a different opinion, I have a different opinion, we work together to move forward. Like, I don't like compromise, but that's what things, like, we work together. We shouldn't all see eye to eye. Thinking like everybody else is not really thinking, and that's group thought's dangerous. I'm going on a tangent. Just love each other.
I love it. Anything big you feel like we didn't touch on? I know we're like wrapping up here, but is there anything else you're like, dude, I mean, we can't close out this podcast if we don't talk about this thing over here or that thing over there? Like, anything major, any big points you feel like
No.
That
I think we could do this again and be a whole... Would touch on 100 different things again?
Yes.
No. It was good. I don't have nothing big. You want me to save something big for the end?
No.
Trying to wrap up. You got anything big?
Yeah. Well, actually, I
conversation
murdered several people 10 years ago, and this is, I'll tell you this part of the story.
No, nothing big, man. Just...
Well, dude, this was a blast.
Yeah.
I'm stoked that we got to have more than the 5-minute conversation.
Yeah, it was nice.
In passing at the gym.
I always feel like they kind of end. You're like, I have so much more I wanted to say to him.
Always, yes. There's so much. It's like, we talk like before a class or something. I'm going to go start class and we're warming up, and I'm like, man, I wanted to tell Nick this and tell him that, and then what he said made me think of this, and then oh man, like I want to share. It's like, so I'm stoked that we got an uninterrupted, probably, I don't know, about 2 hours or so, whatever this is. I appreciate you making the time.
Always.
To come
always
and hang
make
out
time.
and
this
do
was a blast.
Yeah, I appreciate
Once
it.
I got loosened up a little bit.
Yeah, no, 100%. We made it happen, dude. Before we tell everybody goodbye officially, we got to let them know where they can find you if they do want to reach out to learn more about all the different things that we talked about. Where's the best place to do that? Is it a website? Is it social? Where can they
just Instagram, at Nic.Bronkall on Instagram, and then Columbus Breath and Exposure also on Instagram. That's the business page. There is a web page, ColumbusBreathExposure.com. That'll give you more of a rundown of, like, I just changed everything over again. We made a decision not to have me. It was always like Nic Bronkall, performance coach, therapist, to now fully be in on Breath and Exposure. Shoot me a DM. My cell phone's somewhere online. I think it's in the business Google page. Shoot me a text. Like, don't be weird about it. Being a male massage therapist is a very interesting experience, as I can imagine it would be for a female. But being a male massage therapist, I have a lot of stories, which we can save for next time. So
perfect.
Find me on the socials. Just slide into the DMs if you need help or want to talk. I'm very open. Like, anybody wants to talk or chat, like, I'm not gonna say, hey, you gotta pay me money. Like, I'll help anybody. It's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, you have to pay me.
Dude, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
This was a blast. This was an absolute blast.